holiday bank was accrued. Some people had been in the hospital for 20 years, accruing this holiday bank on top of their PTO. They now had 6 months to take that holiday vacation, or they were going to lose it completely. And people had been here and dedicated most of their lives to this employer, and now they're changing, making this such a drastic change. It was also different in terms of additional workload. So my team in general, we now have to onboard an additional department. We have to manage their processes, which isn't a big difference, but it's an additional thing for us to do. So moving forward into future implications, I would just like to say I was the representative for 220 people within 3 months, in addition to the people I already represent within the company. So the approach to the transition was not communicated well in terms of trickling down. So when I would facilitate a future transition, I think that's the thing I would influence the most. Communication is key. How is this being informed to the employees, and what response are we getting back? How much time is being given for these people to decide if they would like to move into a different department or to stay with their current employer? Or are they going to move into and make that choice into the corporate entity? Going back, we had 2 HR assistants. They actually hired a per diem employee to assist me, and she filed everything for me. And that was great. But her phone line was not directed on the FAQ. My phone line was directed on the FAQ. So if we had additional support, it would have been a lot smoother. And in closing, the planners are on the same page as the doers. So when we spoke to our VP, we wanted to inform him of the differences. We have different benefit plans in this state. We have different PTO plans in this state. Would you like to move forward with removing this benefit for people? And they said yes, because their main point is to move from point A to point B. And I'm trying to at least advocate for the employee as much as possible. But I would like to, in the future, be able to communicate that more and be able to advocate with the upper level management or executives, just to kind of inform them of these changes and how drastic it is going to be for the future. So, and I would like to close off with, it's okay to ask for help. In this moment, I wish I would have asked for more help because of the overbearing amount of employees, and to state your opinion when it's needed or when it's warranted. But thank you for your time tonight as my presentation.
Your professionalism is really up there. I really enjoy your outfit, the way you feel like the audience, the way that you're conveying the information, the way you're talking about your workplace. It's all very like real life worthy.
Yeah, just to kind of add on to that, like your tone and the way that you move was very professional. You didn't talk with your hands a lot, you were like overly enthusiastic, but you were still engaged in your topic. I thought your slides were, the style of the slides were relatively clean and professional looking as well. The only thing that I would recommend is to kind of cut back on the text that you have on the slides. There's a lot of stuff that's going on, and maybe tie in exactly how your example was related to the life cycle theory. So that's something that, like, in doing the readings, like I'm familiar with it, but it's a little bit difficult to kind of still learning how to apply it and whatnot. So that might have been a little bit helpful to be like, oh, well, this example is close to the life cycle because of this and this.
I think like I wanted to do that by the end of it, but it went over my head and I was like, last slide.
Okay. All good, we're all
yeah.
learning. All good.
Thank you.
I apologize, I didn't catch your name.
Cassandra.
Thank you.
I just wanted to appreciate you have a particularly kind smile and kind voice.
Thank you.
So I just thought that's really, it just kind of, it works really well for you how you project yourself.
Thank you. Yes.
I love your blazer. Where'd you get it?
Yeah, it's Zara.
Oh, love it. Also, you are so professional up there. Like if I had a company at O wanting to work for me and represent us, I have no idea what goes on in HR. So sometimes you kind of lost me just because I felt like, wow, I don't even know what an FAQ is.
It's like a fact sheet.
Oh, because you said
Frequently asked questions.
Oh. See, yeah.
Sorry.
Wow. No, it's okay because someone else probably knows.
But that's good to keep in mind because I feel like I'm very I'm presenting as like a corporate person and I'm trying maybe the next one I need to not. So
No, because I think that this, I mean, it says on here, take to the boardroom or something like that, present to the management or whatever. I gave you the highest level on there because it's just so professional and so worded it so well that I was like, wow, like she knows exactly what she's talking about. And if you did present it to your job, I'm sure that they would be on board and buy into whatever you were selling. So, good job.
Yeah, I love how you laid out the problems within the organization and also directed it with research. And at the end, you kind of had the future applications. But my question is, have you tried anything of like presenting like this type of things to your employee?
no. I've always been in like lower level positions and then been trusted to do things like this. So I think within the next time we have a transition, I'll probably want to voice my opinion more. This was done really quickly and at the same time that we were like undergoing an acquisition with another hospital. So I kind of just did it. So, but I think in the future, now that I'm kind of moving up in the company, I feel more comfortable to do so. Will they be susceptible to change? I don't think so. So, but I think like the small implementations, maybe taking like more time to do this, understanding the intricacies of like benefits, and the gripes and complaints that people have, I think maybe will make a difference, but I don't know how much change I'll be implementing. Just like Dr. Fuller says, it's really difficult at this time, but I'm hoping to do so in the future.
Yeah, super professional. I appreciate that. Very corporate. So that's good. As the other people said, there was a little bit of a hyper focus or kind of jargon related in HR, which is fine. I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily, just to be aware of, depending on who your audience is. I like how you stuck with something you're passionate about and familiar with to explain kind of the phenomena that we're trying to deal with, right? That we're reading about and trying to learn how to implement well. And I also appreciate your kind of authenticity in it wasn't like this glowing story about how you're this amazing, and you are an amazing person, but it wasn't like I did all these great things and I saved people hundreds of, dollars or their jobs, and like it was this wonderful thing that I myself took care of. No, this was a hard experience that I'm sure was very demanding of you, both physically, like for your time, and emotionally. It's probably very burdensome. So I appreciate that. That's not something people want to stand up in front of a room and really express.
Yeah.
But you did so without ever seeming like weak or like you made any grave mistake. So this was the task that I was responsible for. I did it, but I think even having done it, maybe in the future, having learned from this experience, I could advocate more strongly for the groups that I serve. So I liked that. I thought that was really authentic and vulnerable, but honest, and I think helpful for all of us to hear as well. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. It was a very good presentation. You did awesome.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'll try to move away from the next time. See how that goes.
I don't know. Stick with your wheelhouse. It's good.
Right.
It's good. Watch next time she comes in like.
You didn't need to get more
If she comes next and like starts up, what's up, bros? I'll be like, whoa, overcorrection. I'm sorry, I got it wrong about your animals and your significant other. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I mean, I did pull a fast one because I just got my cat recently.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, you
But I remember the tattoo on your arm, which is so cool.
it's polyfield.
Yeah, looks great.
Now I have to add a capsule, so I
Oh,
should have waited.
well, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't seem nervous at all.
No.
From now on, you can find.
No, I didn't. I mean, I had booked my appointment like 5 months ago, so.
I'm gonna try my last one to be weird.
So I'm curious, I didn't see a face for your husband. Is that in case you like get a different one? I'm just kidding. Totally kidding.
You know,
Is that back in the
that
company?
stays. Oh, Asian guys, look at that.
Right. Oh, you can change during the day.
Yeah.
I love that idea. So versatile. Oh, that's so good.
I know how to shoot.
Alright, everyone, hello, I'm Kat, and I'm gonna be presenting on organization development and change. And yes, you heard that correctly, I said organization instead of organizational, and I'll get into that a little bit on this slide. So first of all, I want to introduce you to a very wise man. He is Dr. Stephen Goodwin, and he's the president at Turning West, where I interned. And so this is just a little quote that I found really interesting about organization development, what it's really about. And I want to highlight the healthy human work systems portion of it, because saying organizational development really focuses on the individual development of different individual workers within the organization. But organization development is the organization moving forward towards a goal, progressing all together. It's a system of interrelated parts, so all the employees work together to achieve that change. So a little bit about Turning West. I've been interning with them as an OD intern for a little over a month, and I've learned a lot of great things. Some of the 3 key factors on how to bring about change within an organization are culture realignment, leadership development, and team development. So a little bit on each of those. Culture realignment is really when you get an organization has values, mission, and vision, but sometimes the workers stray away from that, and then it causes dysfunction within the workplace. So culture realignment really brings people back and kind of invites individuals to reflect on their own personal values and see how it aligns with the organization. And if it does, then that's when you get a healthy, functional workplace. Leadership development is just developing leaders, obviously. And the way that you do that is you build communication skills, so communication between manager and employee, and just helping your employees work towards a common goal, motivation, all the things we've been talking about in these weeks. Team development focuses more on team building and developing individual skills where they can work together as a cohesive group. So techniques to promote organizational change. So first, I just want to say that these 3 are some of the ones that we use a lot at the internship. The first one is ICF-based executive coaching. So in Dr. Iverson's class on Monday, we got a little taste of that. It was the modeling the coach and the coachee interaction. ICF is the International Coaching Federation. So basically, their mission is to catalyze awareness amongst coachees. And how you do that is you provide a place for coachees to reflect on themselves and their current behaviors and attitudes, thoughts, things like that in the workplace. And sometimes they're dysfunctional and they come to realize that and they're like, oh, I need to change. So the coachee reflects and the coach just helps guide them along the way. Communication is an important aspect of every interpersonal relationship ever. The way that you do that is you actively listen, and the goal is to improve receptiveness. So if you communicate well, it doesn't really help if the other person on the other end isn't receiving that information. It's what both parties can do to get the point across and then to implement change. And team building, this is just Team dynamic sessions is what we do within the internship that I work at. And what we do is when dealing with different clients, different teams, we kind of get them all together and we facilitate communication between them and help them realize what each of them is doing wrong, what they're doing right, and how to make the workplace more productive. So OD intervention, expectations versus reality. So based on all the literature that we've been reading, we kind of expect that, we're the experts in this field. Consultants come in and we tell people what to do. We tell them this is the right way, this is how you improve. And that's not always the case. People are not always receptive to change. So that's a little bit of difficulty. The reality is that change is an ongoing process. It's never ending. Just because consultants come in and they help you doesn't mean it's always going to be rainbows and butterflies, like Adam once said. And these are my references. You had so much good information. Like I feel like I learned a lot just about your internships and just organization development in general. You knew your information very well, even though you seemed really nervous. But I know that you knew it. It's just I think with the next couple presentations, you'll harness it way better and you'll keep growing and not be as nervous about it because I know you have the information there. I learned a lot.
Is this your second time presenting? Yeah. That's really good. I remember the first time you presented your slides. I remember there was a lot of stuff. Now I've seen that you took that advice where you kind of spread out the information, the images. So that was really a good improvement, and especially with your second time presenting. I've seen a lot of improvement. So good job.
Yes, I really like that you spoke about your internship because I'm so interested in like what your job is going to be, and I look forward to like speaking to you and having like maybe you implement that in your future presentation as well, just so that we can learn more because I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Definitely. And I think we're pretty much all connected on LinkedIn, I think. And then we're all in this Slack group chat. So if you guys have any questions about consulting or internships or anything, feel free to shoot me a message.
I was trying not to talk because I really enjoyed your presentation. I love the information and I like that you shared a whole new idea, right? Like, and it kind of explained what the difference between organizational development versus organization development. And that's like a whole new idea that we haven't even learned or discussed. And I was just really fascinated and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Yeah. I liked the quote and it gave good parameters for a paradigm shift. You're saying, audience, I want you to change your mind. And I'm not distinctly, not in any like really major way, in a subtle but important way. And I thought you framed that really well. One thing I would try to do in that context, because it was subtle, you're moving from organizational to organization. And as I just did, I would encourage you to try and emphasize that vocally, to make sure that it's clear for the audience that they can hear organization is this systematic change of collective groups facilitating a deliberate strategic change for the better of their organization, right? Versus the organizational is the individual focus where we're moving people to different places, but it's focused on the single person at a time, potentially, right? So I would just try and emphasize that, like with your volume, right? As just a strategy, because it's so subtle, right? You're not using different words. If you use different words, it's easy for people to catch it and like, oh, she's saying this is now that. Like, oh, okay, I got it. But when it's just a really subtle, like 2 letters on a word, you have to make sure that people hear it and can follow that really well. So I think that would be one recommendation. Other than that, I think you did really well. So thank you.
I apologize, I was a little late and I didn't get to load my slides beforehand.
You have a nickname we don't know about?
Bean.
Bean.
Short and hyper.
Like a jumping bean. Ah.
Oh, Bean. There are worse things.
Yeah.
Is the roasted bean called the coffee then?
Huh?
I think the roasted coffee bean is called the coffee then.
The coffee is the-
Nib. I like roasted bean.
Yeah. I don't think they were referring to coffee. Yeah, it was mostly just like, because I was like smaller than all of them.
You did the-
And then also like, I was kind I don't know where.
What is it? Is that like a toy?
No, it's like,
No, it's a physical thing too. You've never seen a real jumping?
Is it like a battery powered kick?
No, it's like a real bean that there's like a little like worm inside. And as they move, the bean like goes around.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real thing. I've seen them before. It's amazing.
How are you guys doing tonight?
Excellent.
Good, glad to hear it. Sorry that took a second. It was a little crazy. So who is afraid of change? Number of people? Who has been afraid of change in their life? I certainly have. I know coming into this field was very scary for me. I mean to be standing in that. So point of my presentation today is change is not bad. Change is how organizations not only survive, but it's how they thrive. IO psychologists are the facilitators of change. I think it's our job to not only convince people that change is good, but that it's necessary. So let's define change, or different types of change. You guys, of course, read it, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. You have teleological processes, which are plan change, dissatisfaction, like identifying dissatisfaction, searching for a solution, a goal setting, and implementation. Life cycle process, which is pre-configured states of development. Dialectical change, which is conflict resolution and synthesis coming from it. And evolution, which is variation, selection, and retention. So what's important from that is the right change in the right situation. Successive change is situationally dependent. So not only does it affect, change isn't defined not only by its merit, but also by the politics in the organization you're promoting it. And it's the right change at the right time. And not only that, often a combination of different change processes is important and necessary. So consulting, which is what we're all doing, when I started reading this, I wanted to just say it's a teleological change, but it's not. It's all four, I would argue. Teleological is where you start, and you end probably with evolution. So of course, there are phases of change. So you start off with your emergence phase, which is the idea and its state at the beginning. Idea and new state envisioned. So where you start, you don't have a plan yet. You're not working towards it, and then you go into a developmental. I'm just stuttering all over tonight. I apologize. You go into a developmental change where it's didactic. You have people competing for ideas and who wants their idea to come out on top. And then you go into implementation and diffusion, which is life cycle and evolutionary change. How you implement it once the conflict is over and how it changes and evolves over time. So defining successful change. Changes are 10.23 times more likely to be considered great if they are beneficial to the end user. I think that it's where I am learning about change. I just think about change. I don't think about how it benefits people. But of course, the end goal of change is that it's good. Like going outside the realm of organizations. If you think about technology 20 years ago, nobody had smartphones. Smartphones were a huge change, and I would argue they're incredibly beneficial at the end. And then additionally, changes are 9.22 times more likely to be considered great if they resolve conflict. And then successful changes become institutionalized. We take them for granted. We don't think about that they were changes at one point. We're like, of course, that's how we do it. That's how we always done it, but we haven't. Thank you. Yeah.
Not right there. Sorry. I made it, but not funny.
Okay.
I feel like when you start talking fast, that's when you start using your thumbs more.
Oh,
So if
okay.
you could just slow down, and give your brain time to catch up, and for your mouth time to catch up with your brain, you know?
Did someone count my thumbs this time? Was it a lot?
I almost did, and then I was too far gone at that point.
Oh, okay. So it was a lot. Thank you. All right. Cool. Yeah. What are the criticisms? No, it's good. This was my last presentation. This is my fifth one. I would assume it's my last presentation, assuming I don't fail. Always possible. So yeah, I appreciate the harsh criticism because I will get more.
Sorry if it was too hard.
No, it wasn't.
I didn't mean for it to come
Definitely,
out that way.
it didn't come out like that at all. I was thinking that because I was going through and I started to stutter and I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, and then you just start.
Yeah.
It's really when you start talking fast, because I've noticed, I think your last one you did really well. You managed them, there was a few, right? I think Kat counted them. No, actually count. It was a lot less. But
Okay.
yeah, so, and then this time, once you started talking fast and then you started realizing you were doing it,
Yeah.
I feel like you couldn't kind of stop it down. So at that point, maybe catching it and then just, it's okay, you know what I mean?
Yeah, thank you.
And making those changes, but I did like your information.
Okay. I didn't feel super confident with my information on this one. This was like out of all the presentations, this was the hardest one for me to research for some reason. Like last night at like midnight, I was like, maybe I'll just write a paper and not present. But here I am. So.
I did the opposite. I was gonna try and write the paper and I was like.
So I think this is one of your first presentations that you haven't tied in a personal example.
Like you're right. I did the consulting thing, but it was super brief.
Well, I mean, but it's relevant to your life.
Yeah.
Like I know a lot of your presentations have talked about like your experience as a firefighter or where it is that you're working or things like that, and you just seemed so much more comfortable. Like when you were presenting, I was waiting for that example because I've gotten used to seeing it from you, and I was like, oh, it's not here. So maybe in the future, with whatever presentations you do, maybe it would be helpful to kind of tie in some personal meaning for
Okay.
you. And then that like establishes your knowledge. You're like, okay, this was my experience. this was how I felt in this situation. And so even if you're completely unfamiliar with the topic, you at least have that.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
and then you can just kind of go from there.
Thank you.
It
Yeah.
would probably take more pressure off the topic.
It did, because I didn't feel like I covered the topic well enough, which is why I felt like today I had like 2 slides, like at work. And I took some of the personal stuff out to make sure I covered the topic, and I probably shouldn't have done that.
I've seen that it's been more beneficial, or like more people enjoy it if they're not getting like a summary of the reading, because everyone's like, yeah, we did that, like, you know, and like you bring in a whole new idea, and I feel like that when we've been doing that, I've seen a trend that more people come on board with the idea. So yeah, maybe just take off that stress for people. You know? You don't need to-
Anyone else? No. Kind of covered it. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to commend you. 'Cause
Okay.
I know when I have a direct at work, like I don't want to come back and do like a presentation. So good job
Thank you.
in sticking with it and continuing to come and showing up for yourself. And us.
I appreciate it.
You consistently start off really strong.
Oh, so you're saying I end that?
So. I think they cover the other
Okay.
stuff that you can grow.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your self-deprecating sense of humor.
Yeah.
It's great. It was really funny. I'm just trying to recover. That was. I think it was good. I think your expectation, maybe our expectation of you, is great because you have given great presentations.
Okay, thank you.
So I wanna let you know that, and I think what I really appreciate. Thank you, Cassandra, for saying. Everybody is so supportive and like cheering for the people that are presenting. Like, you got this. I know Anna even said in her own presentation when people comment, and she's like, "No, you got this. You could do this. You're and I appreciate that. That's the culture. That's the atmosphere that we have. If there is any type of critique, it's always constructive, right? Like you could improve on and make this better because you're capable and that's something that you would benefit from, right? And I appreciate that perspective and view that we all have. So that said, I mean, there are some things that people said. I'll try and say some things that other people haven't said yet that I think might be helpful. In terms of like just a simple graphic in the beginning, it had like on the bottom, like Shutterstock, and then the number. You can crop out like the unwanted parts of images, right?
Which image were you actually talking about? Just out of curiosity.
It's like right in the beginning, like the first one. That one.
Oh, you're totally right. Oh, okay.
So
I
just
didn't
as a
notice that. Okay.
just as a thought, right? It like I know when they're watermarked, I won't use them because it degrades the professionalism.
I didn't notice that.
That's okay.
That's embarrassing.
It's fine. I'm just letting you know, like it's something you can do. And for everybody, I know this is strange because you probably have never used this search engine before, but Bing has the best image search on the internet. Like it's fantastic, far better than Google. So I use it only for image search. Like it's great for that, and you get more Creative Commons licensing and better image quality because their search engine is better for it. So you might find less work to do in the cropping end or having to filter through like good images because Bing does a really good job of that already. Yeah.
I get probably 90% of my images off of Pixabay. I don't know if anybody's heard of that one. Pixabay. They're all royalty free.
Okay.
You can use them in business, education, whatever.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, they're really
Pixabay.
So do I Google things or?
It's funny you say that because I did earlier today. I just typed in Bing, but like my browser's Google, and so it Googled Bing for me. I was like, oh, yeah, I just Googled Bing. Yeah. That's what I did. So that's one thing. And Pixabay sounds great. Thank you, Mark, for that. Just ways in which you could, use images for all of us that aren't, copyrighted or have some graphic on them that we don't want. So that might be helpful. Let's see, what else did I write here? So strategically speaking, it's much harder to give a presentation on new information that you haven't had time to just digest and live into, right? And really kind of think about for a long period of time, so that it permeates into the long-term recesses of your memory. That's really hard, right? If you're just trying to go up there and recite short-term memory information, that's incredibly challenging. So in lieu of that, like where you want to share information that you don't need to read off a cue card, right? That's the goal.
Yeah, I had a huge cue card today, so.
No, that's okay. I'm just if you have to, you have to. If that's like key information that you're trying to get across, but the information you were getting across was information that everyone's read, right? They were the models and the theories. So we don't need that specificity. Know the audience and know that we don't need that. What we need more of is, as I said earlier, maybe some of the translational stuff, and that's why I think people like the stories so much, because you're so good at taking dense journal article material and theory and saying, this is what it looks like in the real world when a house is on fire. Like, this is what this process is like, which is awesome. So I think our expectation is like, oh, he's really good at the translation stuff, but there was no translation here, right?
Great.
So that's okay. That's okay. It's good to know, and this is something that I don't think I've articulated or emphasized enough, to know what you don't know. You have to know what you don't know. And if you don't know all the ins and outs and nuances of change theory and models, fine, that's okay. You don't have to give a presentation on change theory and all the models. You can give it on something that relates to that and could exemplify that in one way. All you're trying to do in a presentation is tell one story.
Okay.
That's all you have time for.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So we don't need all the, the really specific details and how all these theories like relate to each other or don't. We just want one translatable, here's what this really is in real life. And I think that matters to us because we can hold on to it, right? We can like remember that story, like, oh, I get it now. That's what change is like. That's what this example meant. That's what this dense, boring paper was all about.
I wouldn't say boring, but it was definitely dense.
It's dense, right? It's dense. You're very gracious to the authors. So thank you. I appreciate your presentations. I appreciate you, so thank you very much.
I'm sure I'll be giving up.
No, you did fine. Good job. But you definitely will give more presentations throughout the program. So, it's not like you just give these and then you never give a presentation again. Oh, that's a great question. If there's space, I don't see why not. As long as there's availability.
So if I could have like 7 presentations and 5 papers.
Sounds exciting.
For me personally, it's easier to do the presentation.
Yeah.
And it's more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Oh,
don't want to write any more papers. I
right.
wrote a lot of papers.
I'm with you on that. I'm understanding of that totally.
I don't think it was an answer yet. If it's gonna be a no. If it's gonna be a no, don't give it yet.
Five papers?
Just think about the learning.
Yeah.
Think about the experience that you're giving students. Think about the experience you were giving.
Oh, so fun.
So I can answer right now because I think you'll be happy. You can give as many presentations as you are physically capable of given the schedule. Yeah. Well, if everyone wanted to do that, it'd make it real tough. So thank you on their behalf.
I also think, just as a heads up, I waited too long between my first presentation and my second one. So I feel like I'm re-nervous all over again. Thank you.
Yeah.
You survived last time, so.
Right?
I said you survived last time, so yeah, a little bit more comfort. So hello, everyone. My name is Alexis Savina, and today I would like to talk to you guys about rethinking an organization. So over the summer, I read this book called Think Again. It's by Adam Grant, a famous IOP psychologist, and I have been recommending it to everybody I It is amazing. And so I thought it would be a fun way to take on this week's theme of organizational development and change by telling you guys some of the lessons I learned. So one of the main things that Adam Grant talks about is that oftentimes the most successful and well-established people will be the most reluctant to change. They're very stuck in their ways, and rightfully so, it got them to where they are. But he advises some ways to get out of that kind of mindset. One thing is to keep an open mind, don't be afraid of change, and to keep people around you that will challenge your mindset and challenge the way you do things. So I have a quick question. Does anyone grow up with a BlackBerry phone? Okay, a lot of people. Does anyone have one now? Okay. So one of the things that Adam Grant talks about is the rise and fall of BlackBerry. So in 2009, BlackBerry accounted for about 49% of the phone market. And within 5 years, they dropped from 50% to less than 1%. That's a big change. So what did they do wrong? What happened? Turns out that the creator and CEO of BlackBerry didn't make change. A lot of people would come up to him and recommend different features for the BlackBerry, say, you know, we see trends going this way, why don't we change it? He didn't want to. He was very focused on the email aspect of BlackBerries and the keyboard that he created, basically, the phones. Great invention. You can't rely on that for the rest of your life. So what we realize here is, I think if you ask the common person, what do you think BlackBerry did wrong? What went wrong with BlackBerry? They'll say, oh, the organization, company didn't change. Okay, kind of. But it's important for us as biopsychologists to recognize that something that Adam Grant points out, adapting to change isn't something that an organization does necessarily, it's something that people do within the organization. And it's important for us to think of it in that structure. So with that, what happens if we allow change within the organization? It's completely flipped to the other side. So Pixar, back in 2000, had just released Toy Story. So they were doing really well. Everyone loved Toy Story and they wanted to build this momentum. So they brought in Brad Bird, who's a new director, and they were like, what do you have for us? He pitched a movie that he was really excited about, and Pixar said no, that it was way too complicated for us, it's going to cost way too much money and take too much time. But instead of Brad Bird saying, okay, fine, I'll move on from it, he went out into Pixar, and he found the pirates of Pixar, as he called them. He wanted the people that were the most disagreeable, complicated people to work with. The ones that butt heads all the time and are so opinionated that no one else wants to work with them. He wanted these people. And so what he did was he used a kind of reflection strategy. He took this dialectical model of change, brought all of these people together, presented his movie idea, and said, let's make this happen for cheaper and less time consuming. I want this to happen. So what ended up happening was these pirates of Pixar butted heads, disagreed, and created a lot of change. Us as consumers, we got The Incredibles. That is how The Incredibles was made. And with The Incredibles, we all know it's very successful. They actually did this in 4 years. It was quoted that it would take them about 10 years and $500 million to make this movie. Pirates of Pixar did this in 4 years, and it was actually cheaper to make than most of the other Pixar movies that they had made before. They realized that they could layer some shapes on top of each other and edit it a certain way. Cheaper, much better. So this is what happens when you allow people to have some freedom and butt heads and disagree with each other in a respectful way. Obviously, we all know that there's certain ways to go about this. You don't just want to have people arguing all the time. There's ways to initiate this. But oftentimes, these pirates are what we need to look for. Keep these people around. So I'd like to leave you with some broad tips for organizational development. Number one is going to be use a reflection strategy when you can. As we've learned, not always, but sometimes it can be good to use a reflection strategy. Number two is going to be don't be afraid of change. The creator of BlackBerry was afraid of change. He thought that if he added certain features, he would create a competitive market for himself. But it turned out that he just stopped being competitive and he halted himself. He was afraid of change. Number three is going to be don't disregard someone because they disagree with you. Keep those people around you. keep the people that say, why? Why do you do it that way? Why do you think that? These people will help you change. And finally, this advice is for you guys as a student, an industrial organizational psychologist, and as a future consultant, is to rethink and think again. Thank you.
That was fantastic. That was really good. I love that you tied in our reading. You tied in something that was relatively meaningful for you, I would assume, which is animation, which is fantastic. You tied in Adam Grant stuff, which is also super duper fantastic. Your tone was great. The language that you used was great. It was easy to stay like connected to what it was you were saying. Your language was awesome. I have no negative feedback. Like I think everything was just absolutely superb. Good job.
Even though you said that you were really nervous, like you looked so comfortable up there, and I couldn't even tell. You did a really good job.
I like found myself kind of losing my breath over here, so I was like, okay, just breathe. Okay, it's fine. Thank you.
I like how you incorporated the Socratic method and the dialectic method, because I'm super into that. So conversations and not being scared to disagree. I just really like that aspect of dealing with change. It really resonated with my personal philosophy. So that's cool.
I like how you started out saying you were going to talk about, rethinking. I think that's how you ended it, right? You said rethink and think again. So it's super touchy. It tied it back to the beginning, and I love the storytelling throughout. It was really entertaining, and it was very informational. So, and I don't really like to do extracurricular reading.
Yeah.
But I wanted to read that book.
No, it's really good. I actually read it because I got accepted into the program, and I was like, oh my god, I don't really know. Like, I mean, I know IOP, but like, I didn't know outside things. So being the graduate student I was like, I should do something. And this book is really what kind of sparked my interest in a lot of IO things, and it's related back to a lot of the things we've learned. So I tell everyone to read it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that you brought in some Adam Grant material, even though he is my nemesis, but that's fine.
Well, you did mention like one of the important things is to know what you don't know. So I was sitting back there, I was like,
It's good. I appreciate it. Actually, in the info sessions, whenever I do info sessions for potential IO students, grad students, I always mention Adam Grant, and it's a really accessible book. I think it's great. It's interesting, and he's phenomenal. He has a couple books, but this one is his newest, and I think it's very good. In your presentation itself, I love your examples. They're really potent and relatable. Because I think we've all experienced to some extent an apprehension towards change, and or we all have seen or heard about companies that didn't change well, like BlackBerry. I thought that was an excellent example, and I really appreciate the audience engagement with that. So asking us who had right.
like I had one, but I didn't know.
Exactly. Like, did anyone have one? And that was good. And then, does anyone have one now? And it was very depictive of the graphic, right? So you don't even have to tell the story; it tells itself. Like it's so familiar to everyone that it's a really potent example of that. I liked the Pixar example as well. I'm sure there are countless examples of how reluctance to change is cause of failure, and then you came back with change, for a better product or a new thing, when accomplished, can be great, right? It's like your slide said, it's one of the most successful Pixar movies that they've ever made. So I think that was, really great examples of both ends of the change spectrum, right? Failures and successes there. So I think you did a really good job of that. Great professional presentation. I think you walked around really well. Your volume was great. All of that was really good. Just make sure you caught yourself and took a breath. So that was good. Well done on that. I think you did awesome.
And I would like to say when I was rehearsing, I tried this, but I kind of caught myself like giggling at myself. Yeah, I think I need to
Did anyone see me doing this earlier in class when I was talking? You did?
Yeah, because I tried it and I was like, I'm not this person. I'm sorry. So I'll try, but I'm not.
You're good. You're good. No worries. You got to do something authentic to you. Good job. Thank you again.
Okay, so I know last time I presented, I stopped breathing, I feel like, because I was talking so fast. So I'm gonna try my best this time. But hello, my name is Tiffany Roberts, and this is my presentation on organizational development and change. So today I will be covering a quick little change activity. Then we're going to go into what is organizational development and change. Next, creating a positive HR culture. And lastly, just some concluding remarks. So this is just a really quick activity. I kind of modified it because it usually takes a lot of time. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to list 6 words, and just by a raise of hands, if you associate that word with change, just go ahead and raise your hand. So this is something that I did as when I did orientation at my institution. I was in organizational development, and this activity is just something interesting because you see how people around you think of change. So we're going to start with stressful. So how many people think change is stressful? Growth. Anxious. Challenging. Transformation. And lastly, opportunity. So as you can see, the hands changed on each word that was said. So here there are 3 words that people associate positively with change and 3 words that people associate negatively with change. Some may argue that challenging could be good or bad depending on the situation you're put in. So next, what is organizational development and change? So organizational development is an ongoing continuous change making, organizational creativity management, and leadership process. So in organizational development, there's so many things you can change. It's never ending what you can change in an organization. And next is change, an ongoing and never ending process of organizational life. So both of these have in common, it's a never ending. There's always going to be something to change and something you can improve. So here are 4 organizational development initiatives. So human process, technostructural initiatives, strategic, and human resource management. So for the next example, I'm going to go into positive HR culture. So for this, I'm going to be using the bottom 2, which is strategic and human resource management. So creating positive HR culture. So this is something that my company currently is working on. We're trying to create a more positive HR culture because everyone perceives it differently. So 2 questions that we want to think about is 1, what do your employees think of HR? And next, what do your leadership team think of HR? This is important because HR is seen on a scale. So you have leadership on one end, and then you have your employees on the other. So the goal of what we're trying to do is have HR somewhere in the middle. We want people to come to us from the higher end of the scale, the leadership, and the lower end of the scale, the employees. So how are we doing this with our company? So I work at a K-12 school, and we're a corporate office, and we have 5 schools. Now, the corporate office is very separate from the school sites.
So the 5 schools are everywhere in the IE, and we have our corporate office in Ontario. So one way that we're trying to have a more positive HR culture is by doing site visits. Just simply going to them, showing that we are here for you, and not only can you come to us, but we also come to you. So you're invited to talk to us in both means. Next is closing the gap of HR being a negative place. A lot of people think of HR as a place you go when you're in trouble, and we don't want that. We want the correlation of HR to be that we're the mean of your communication, and you can come to us with anything. We're here to help you change, and we're always going to be growing, and hopefully for the best for the employees and the leadership team. And next is creating an open door policy, knowing that they are able to come to us with anything that they need or we need to change. So for some concluding remarks, change is perceived differently depending on the person. So that change activity you see. And each word, people associated change with different words. Next is organizational development, and change is never ending. Next, there are 4 key areas to organizational development, and positive HR culture impacts the way employees. Here are my references. Thank you. Great job. Thank you. I tried. I don't feel like I was running out of breath there, but
You did a good job. Yeah, you did a lot calmer. You guys, you felt like you did different time and according to each one. I even know it was like a little bit less text on the side, but you did better than your last one, and your last one was really good too. So, yeah, thank you.
yes.
I also think you thought you did a very good job of breathing. It was very good. It didn't seem like you were like, and then like there, like your words are like coming out as long as you can hold your breath pretty much. So that was good. The only thing that I would suggest is to not bring up something that you're not going to talk about. So like in the very beginning when you were talking about those words, you were like 3 of these words are associated with a, positively with change, and 3 of them are negative, and then you just kind of moved on. Which is fine, like it's totally fine. Just a personal suggestion would be to not bring up something that you're not gonna talk about. Because I was curious, I was like, well, what?
Because I had that in my note cards, but I was trying so hard not to look at them because I was like, I can't do it. So it like, I just breathed.
I got you.
But thank you.
It's okay. It's okay. Still did a good job. Yeah, what was the word?
Stressful and anxious.
Was that the negative word? Okay.
Yes.
Overall, it was definitely good. I think instead of reading, I kind of caught you swaying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something that you can definitely learn. I know we take it like subconsciously, but yeah.
I think you could even like slow it down like a little bit more, like Dr. Fuller talked about earlier, saying like you could add different pauses and things like that to catch your breath and just kind of calm it. It's very rushed, but you had really good content and you did a really good presentation.
Already at, no, I think your presentation was strong. It was really good. You had strong content, nice messaging, good examples of your school. I liked the audience participation. I mean, it's great to have us raise our hands with those different words and then tell us like what categorically, people often perceive, some of those loaded words to me. I think it's an uphill battle a lot of times with HR to redefine themselves to the organization. So I like how you talked about that, how that's a challenge. If there's not a chief or a C-level suite HR person, there's often not a voice at the table. And that's a huge issue in IO right now because IO is often housed in HR. And they're quite hamstrung by not enough. They have the insight and information about the need for leadership and buy-in and key stakeholders to be supportive of initiatives. To not have a seat at the table means that stuff's not going to happen, right? So I really liked the recognition and the explanation of kind of investigating what that relationship is like, right? Like what is the current support for HR and the perception of HR, because yeah, it can be challenging. So I liked that. I thought you did a good job there. Something I would try to work on are crutch words. It's subtle if you just use them like, but your statements were so, and it was really strong. And so to me, it was just easier to identify, like, oh, and then you'd say it again. I'm like, oh, there's another one. That happened a few times. I would just work on trying to reduce that by taking a breath, being okay with those pregnant pauses, right? Where there's nothing that needs to be said. You're just allowing space for people to digest the information. My profession, my job is to deliver content a lot of the time, sometimes to enhance skill sets or develop skill sets, but I'm always trying to give something. And I'm trying to give a better insight into ideas or a new technique in data analysis that students didn't have previously. But my perspective is often, if not always, on I'm giving you something. And that, as I said before, and I'm just reiterating now, it completely changes the dynamic of giving a presentation. I'm not the focus. My focus, and I'm not worried about how people see me or perceive me. It's entirely on what can I do to help the people in this room right now progress as much as possible in the content that I'm talking about. And if that's the goal, it really changes the focus in your mind. You're not thinking about how we're looking at you or how you're giving this presentation. It's like, no. I have this really important thing that I'm trying to convey and help people understand. And now it's on us. Like we have to do the work in understanding the things that you're saying, not you. And I think that might help alleviate some of that burden, right? Some of that anxiety in giving a presentation. I often have to remind myself that, like when I'm giving a presentation to faculty, because then it feels like I'm doing a performance. Like I'm up there, everyone knows more about this than I do, and I'm just like the person that got selected out of the hat that just has to give a presentation on this day. So I understand what it's like. I do. I still give presentations and get nervous about it, but I don't get nervous in class because of that perspective. It is I'm trying to give something to the people in the room. I'm trying to deliver something and benefit the people that are here. So if we can shift our perspective in that way, I think your experience might be different. And you didn't seem that nervous, but this is really for you and for everybody to try and continually work on that kind of inner dialogue and narrative. Like, okay, I'm just trying to help the people here. So thank you so much for another great presentation. Good job. Oh, Victoria said, I really love the activity. I wish I was in class. The information was structured very well. Totally agree with you, creating a positive view of HR. Yes.
everyone. My name is Rebecca, and this is my presentation on organizational development and change. So I went with Cummings and Worthy's general model of climate change. There was 4 phases, and as you can see, they're kind of like in a cycle. So the first stage is entering and contracting. During this stage, the OD practitioner makes the initial contact with the client, and then I gather initial data to identify problems that are facing the organization. So then after that, once the problems have been identified, they create a contract or agreement in order to create a plan for change. In the next stage is diagnosing. So that's where the client system is closely studied, and they also choose the model for intervention. During the planning and implementing change stage is when they use the plan that was created in the contract. And this comes in 4 different types of intervention. The first is the human process. So that's at the individual, group, and system level. The second modifies the organization structure and technology. The third seeks to improve member performance. And the last of the 4 types of interventions is a way to support the business strategy. Then the last stage is evaluating and institutionalizing. So they reflect back on what they did and try to figure out how they can keep that change there. So now I'm going to talk about how I saw this in effect. So I was in a sorority during undergrad, and I was the president for my senior year. During this time, I worked with an international leadership consultant, and there are change agents who support the chapters in several areas, such as member education, organizational development, leadership development, and then we also had our IRIS experience survey, which was about a 20 to 25-minute survey that we took that was created in collaboration with the research firm that collect and analyze the data for us. And it measured things such as sisterhood, organizational commitment, identity, and social culture. So this is an example of the report that we got from the IRIS survey. So at the top, it gave us kind of a definition of what they were looking at. And then our scores, and then the purple was our score in comparison to how we compared to the other chapters. And then right here was suggestions. So how I connected it is during the entering and contracting phase that was in the beginning. That was our introductory meeting where we met our international leadership consultant and we conducted a SWOT analysis. So that was that initial gathering of data and identification of problems. Then during the diagnosing stage is when we took the IRIS experience. That's when the bulk of the data was collected. And then the planning and implementing change. After we got our results, we worked with the IOP to create a plan for intervention. And most of the time, they were human process and human resource interventions. And then lastly, for the evaluating and institutionalizing change, that was our end of the semester meeting where we reflected back on what we did over the semester and how we can keep that change within the chapter and what we can do differently. Those are my references. Do you have any questions? Yes.
I really like how you took us through the whole process. You kind of summarized at the beginning and then this is how it works in real life. One thing that I would recommend is, I don't know if it's really my framework, but in the beginning when you were explaining steps and you went into detail of what it is, but if the brain wasn't like absolutely, like, I don't know, so maybe just little like bullet points to each step, but overall it's really good and I like it.
For the slide that had the survey results, it was a little hard to see. I wasn't quite sure when you were talking about, because my eyes were trying to focus on it. So I think if you could just zoom in or cut out the section that you're actually touching on, 'cause there's a lot on there. But overall, really great.
Thank you.
I really liked your presentation. I like that you tied in one of your experiences that you had and kind of walked us through the whole process of like how that went. That was really great. My only critique, I guess, would be that it seemed like you were really nervous and you were reading off the slides a lot. And like I get it. I totally understand, especially when we have it up here. It's so easy to either look at that or look at this and not like make that eye contact with your audience. But I really think it's important to kind of engage your audience by like forcing yourself to look at this, even if it's just for like a split second.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say, I think you had a really good presentation. It was a very unique like experience with bringing in sorority, your experience with the IRIS survey. I thought that was really cool. I would just suggest that maybe next time you try to rely less on note cards, just because I felt like when you were using them, you sounded more confident, you sounded more knowledgeable, and it was different. So I would just keep that.
Thank you.
I'm really curious about the outcomes of the implementation because I also came from, but I was also part of a fraternity, and there's a lot of stigma, trust, and positive relationship with the university and within Greek life. So I was just curious of what was the outcome. I was just curious.
So this was actually, this looked at specifically with the university administration, with our alumni headquarters. So it kind of just overall looked at the result of how trusting we were and connected with the university, our alumni with headquarters. So I can send you this picture in the group chat, but like right there, it kind of explains that at the top, but I know it's kind of hard to. But yeah, there was, it was like a whole like 9-page report. But this was the best one I can get because it was like cut off halfway. Yes.
I missed it, but what sorority were you in?
That's the best one.
Oh, okay, we're at.
Consider it.
Oh, cool. Sorry.
That's okay.
Alpha Phi.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, I think you have a really compelling story here. And I think less of the reliance on the note cards and the summary of the different interventions and the things that can be done there, only because you had to read for it. And it was a little bit hard to follow. I agree. There just wasn't enough distinct information. You were saying a lot more than what was structurally there. So it made it, for me anyways, a little bit tough to follow. And I think that's the least important part, right, of the information that you're trying to convey. Only and mostly because you have a limited number of minutes, right? You have a very short presentation to give, but you have a compelling story and a personal experience to draw from. I think the whole thing could have been just this, right? Just your own experience as president of this sorority or organization, and its process through this survey, right? Through this change and investigation into organization and relationship with another organization. So I thought that itself is a really compelling story. You'd have to find like some take-home message there of like, what now do we know that we didn't know before? But I think that's the presentation right there, and less on like the summary of the things that we all read. So just in future and in thinking about delivering presentations, like what new thing or what translatable thing, what personal anecdote or story communicates this point well. And I think you captured that, you had it. And just to be able to dedicate more time to it would give you the freedom to, ditch the note cards, ditch all that stuff, because you can say like, I lived this, right? And I was in a position of authority in doing so. And so you had a unique insight, right? That's my assumption. I don't know. So that would be a great way to give that presentation, like how to structure it in a way because I don't know about you, I was not president of a fraternity or especially a sorority. That would be weird. But I wasn't the president of anything like that, so I don't have a unique insight into that, but you do. So I think that's the thing that you can really deliver in terms of like what it was like in that position to do this thing, and now what do you know that we can now learn from that experience?
But originally, I was gonna talk about the process of like how we immediately went virtual and that kind of pivot and that reaction to change.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find any research to back it up and like kind of add to it.
Yeah.
So then I kind of just fell off it.
Oh, academics are real slow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to publish anything for a while. It's going to be a hot minute before we do anything like that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate your presentation. Good job.
All right, today we talk about organizational development and change. We've all been hearing about it. So first, we're going to go over the change motives. I don't have to spend too much time on this because we've all read about it. But I think what I need to stress is that it's not one size fits all. We can put these together and come up with unique motives of change to adapt to whatever demands are put on the organization or group or ourselves as an individual. So it's important not to just pick either one of these or single out a certain one, but to construct our own methods of change. So one important thing when adapting to a new situation is being able to see or understand the change. So can you spot the change between these two things? If people, a couple said maybe raise your hand when you see it. Takes people a while. So it's very difficult to spot change sometimes, and it's a big, it's not a minor change. The voters.
Yeah.
We're losing, right? And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's a big change. So this is a concept called change blindness. It's very difficult for people to spot changes. It's a phenomenon, and you can read exactly what it is. But when you have two images that are switching, it's very difficult to see a change. And you can't adapt to something that you can't predict. It becomes a post hoc ergo propter hoc, so you're doing it after the fact. You can learn how to predict the change and see it first. You'll be able to better adapt. So you can see when you have the stills, it's very easy to point out that there's a difference in both of these images. It comes out pretty quick. So that's change blindness. So people are very often blind to change, but change is a constant thing. As our friend here, Heraclitus, who is an Ionian Greek, which is modern day Turkey on the coast of the Mediterranean. So if you've ever heard that, the cosmos is in constant flux and change, that was this guy like 1,500 years ago. Okay, so it's not a new thing, it's not a new phenomenon. And you can see he's got some really cool quotes like, all entities move and nothing remains still. Like we're standing on a planet and we're moving through the cosmos, we're constantly changing. You can't step in the same river twice. So it's kind of like going with the flow. When you have a new stimuli or something that you have to adapt to, which is what we're really talking about with change, is adapting to what's changing if we can't predict it. So going with the flow and finding a solution because you're already changing. And I just really like this book. It just doesn't make sense to me. I spent like 30 minutes thinking about that long book. Like, what the heck? We're like the same and we're not the same all at the same time, and we're changing and not changing. So it's almost like viewing change as being static. If you're constantly in change, it's a constant. It's held constant. So everything flows and nothing stands still. This is a good way to maybe cope with unexpected change. just, you're kind of going with the flow, and sometimes things kind of solve themselves. So relate more to IO, there are methods out there of running businesses. This is a Japanese method called Kaizen. So good change is good. Kaizen, right? So you're always changing for the better. It's the idea of constantly improving. So as opposed to looking at change as something that is always going to hurt you, you're already changing all the time for the better. It makes it very easy to adapt to change. And this is a business model that's used in a lot of Japanese companies. And as we learned earlier this week in other classes, is Japanese companies are among the oldest and longest standing in the entire world. 6 out of the 10 oldest companies are Japanese. It may be because they've adapted this style of running a business. And as we learned about BlackBerry, if you're unwilling to change or you're not constantly changing for the better, you won't exist anymore. So this is a salient point for me. So there's different aspects of Kaizen, right? So you empower your people, you're transparent, you are always looking for pure improvement all the time, every day, constantly changing, which is what I like about this program, is it's kind of ambiguous. We're constantly kind of in the dark and making our own solutions. And I like that. I've learned to like it. I was very scared of this when I first started, and now I kind of know, like, we're kind of making the program ourselves, and we're constantly adapting and changing. And how can you be an agent of change if you're unwilling to change? So I really actually enjoy that part of our program. So let it flow. This is kind of where I'm at now. Just, you're going to get the work done. So just chill out, you know. Know your customer. So who are you selling it to? Knowing your product, being willing to adapt. I think that goes back to BlackBerry. They had a very good product, but they didn't understand that customers were changing. They didn't empower their reportees or their employees to make the changes that they probably saw that they needed to change and didn't change. So this is Kaizen. I love Kaizen. This is part of my personal philosophy and arguing. I like to argue, if you can tell. And yeah, that's it. Very short. That was fun. So suggestions.
I think you're a really great presenter. Like the way you speak, because you know what you're talking about, and you always have something interesting to say. So great job.
Yeah, the actor thing. I used to be an actor, so that came out this time. I had coaches in the back.
I love that you bring such depth and breadth of knowledge. Every presentation you give, you always give us a different angle, something different to think about. You brought in a Greek philosopher. You brought in the Kaizen, something from another culture. So you did that within a very short time frame. So I think you did excellent. I'm just curious, Chad, based on what you shared tonight, are you familiar with or interested in chaos theory or complexity theory?
Chaos theory, I was reading about that a little bit today, and that actually Heraclitus is rooted in chaos theory, but it was such an in-depth, like I couldn't go into it.
I think you would really enjoy, so if you kind of read up on chaos theory and complexity theory, the evolution beyond chaos theory, I think you would really enjoy that. And actually both things are
Of course, so chaos theory, what was the other?
complexity theory.
Thank you. Awesome.
So when we were talking about chaos theory, I thought of Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. Did anybody else think of that? Am I the only one? I'm totally wrong, but it's fine. I always love watching your presentations because you always bring in something different. As presenters, I know we always try to tie in our own stories and we try to tie in readings. And your presentations, you always surprise me. You always pull something out of left field and manage to somehow seamlessly tie it in to what it is that we're learning. And I really, really appreciate that. It's something, it's just because it's a different perspective. Like what Brittany was talking about, you always just bring in this random artifact that's oh, cool, how is he gonna tie it in? And you always do. You never fail to always tie it in. You were a lot more confident this time than you were last time. My only suggestion was that you were reading off the slides a little bit.
Okay.
So it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. We all do it.
I feel like I didn't need to do that. I had moments where I was just talking, but I also didn't rehearse it, so it becomes a stream of consciousness, which can be cool, I guess.
You did a really good job.
Yeah, I wanted to back off of what she said. You had good nerves this time, so you weren't overly nervous where your voice was shaking and like you couldn't get explain across, or overly explaining something. You have increased or you have decreased the amount of text on your slides, but I would work on that a little bit more.
Even less?
Mhm.
Okay.
Doing a little bit less because you say something like off the slides, but but you don't say everything. So having all that extra information on there only distracts us because what you're about to tell me is way more interesting than what I'm about to just sit there and read on a slide. So you're very knowledgeable and you don't need to rely on that. Just let it flow naturally because you're really good with articulating how you're feeling or what you're thinking about. So just have more confidence in yourself and less confidence of putting everything on the screen.
Yeah, I feel like I could have spent a lot more time on change blindness because I did a study on it.
You didn't need to spend any extra time on any specific topic. You did a really great job. I really love
That wasn't like 3 minutes, it felt like 2 or 3 minutes. Was it actually like 5 minutes?
I didn't time it.
Was it right in there?
It didn't feel very long though.
Yeah.
It felt really short to me, so I just don't want to go like 20 minutes about Greek philosophy, which I can do.
Yeah.
And then I also really like everything flows and nothing stands still. It's a good one.
I mean, I agree with what everyone said, but also I feel like you should start your own like YouTube channel where you just like bring in philosophy and like
Oh,
different
yeah.
topics. I feel like other people would actually really enjoy the way your brain works. Like I love the way you think.
Oh, thank you.
So, you know, maybe you can become a famous
Maybe you
YouTuber and come back to you or something.
Okay, YouTube channel.
Yeah.
You're like the third person to say, I already tried DJing on YouTube. I'm a horrible DJ, so it's like not very good, but I'm gonna do that.
Make sure when you become famous, use your editor though.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can represent you.
When I have like 1 million followers,
Yeah.
I can have like my nerves break down on the stream.
Oh my God.
We're there for all of it.
Anything else?
I just want to say, like, as a book member, I'm so proud of how much you've grown from your first presentation. I was just like, oh, you've grown so much. And I'm like, so happy to see that.
Thanks. Yeah. I was really, I like rushed off the first time, but I like know everyone now and I like everyone. So
It helps, yeah, it helps.
we're all cool.
Yeah, like everyone said, I love how you implement things, and I love how you always take things a step forward or a step ahead. My only thing is taking it a step further. How can your knowledge about like this philosophies and such, how can you implement that in more of a context in organizational that's relatable? So, what now? Like, what are the action steps? How can you incorporate
How do
those
we
things?
make
Yeah.
this apply? Okay.
Yeah, good. That's the only
Thank you.
Joe's stole my point there. It was great. I was excited for it. I was just about to say, but I didn't want to put this pressure on you before you gave your presentation. Like, all right, we're gonna hear about some Descartes today. Let's hear what we got. But it was Heraclitus or something. But yeah, it was great. It was great. I appreciate it, and I appreciate that you come with, you know, a breadth of knowledge of a wide array of things. And I think you did a really good job of like hooking the audience early and being adaptable. So the first, I think it was your first slide, had a ton of words on it, like just a wall of words, right? And you said, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Because either you were planning on it and that idea based on feedback and good, okay. That's great. That's what I wrote down. Like it was really great adaptability based on the student presentation feedback already given today. Awesome. To be able to flex that quickly is great. And I think it just speaks volumes as to your presentation abilities to be able to like adapt so quickly, it's like moments before you get up there. So that's great. I would have liked to hear more on how blindness theory relates to change and like expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. 'Cause I know teams, not after the fact, teams spot changes before individuals. And I was trying to turn that into an organizational thing, but
Yeah.
I get scattered sometimes.
Yeah. I just thought it was a potent like attention grab because you had everyone's
Yeah,
like
everyone was staring at.
yeah, everyone's
Yes.
like complete attentiveness is like, oh, what is it? I want to win this, right? Whatever. I was a little upset that Amy got it before I did, but but I think you did great with that, and just expanding and saying like, what does that mean for us? Like, how does that like spell out? As a presenter, you have to explicitly say what you already know, because there's no guarantee we know that. And it makes us all feel smart if we can come up with the thing just before you say it, right? Of like, oh, this is like how teams are blind to their own faults or something, right? Like whatever it is. And then we're like, oh yeah, I got that. Or even if we didn't, right?
Okay.
So it just makes your audience feel very good about themselves as well, to spell it out very clearly, really simply. And I think that would add some value to that part.
It took like 30 minutes for me to find that change, just so everybody knows. And I have to do this work and look at what's changing, you know.
I don't believe you. I
So it took
really
a long
don't.
time. Yeah, they were here when I found it. I was like here, like, oh, there it is. I totally did not. It took a long time.
Well, I feel only moderately better about myself, but not really. It's very kind of you. I would say at the end, you have a very powerful, great presentation all the way through. And then at the end, you just want to leave us with something. You said, and that's it, short presentation. But you left with so many like gems. Like give us something at the end to say, and some little anecdote or quote or something, because you want to leave the audience with something. What we remember as human beings are the beginnings and the endings. Everything else in the middle, unless we're taking notes or something, is easily gone in a few minutes. But we remember the end. So even if it's corny, it's okay.
Oh yeah, we're all about.
Yeah, it's fine. Just some little phrase about some of this, right? Some little like you could even leave that quote to the end, like you can't stand in the same river twice.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for your time. And we'd be blown away, like, whoa, he just dropped some knowledge on us. It would be great. But to say like, sorry, that was a short presentation. See ya. It's like, oh, that was a short presentation. It didn't enter anyone's mind that it was a short presentation until you told us it was, right? Yeah. So make sure that you tell us what to think, and we'll think it. That's your job as the presenter. I appreciate that about you.
Yeah, you wanted to say something?
Love that you know
Just for you.
Yeah. Well, that was my last time. Remember that you said that before?
Yeah, we were like trying to measure the.
We were trying to figure out the word for the rest of the class to figure it out.
I still can't figure out what.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But yeah, that was my last. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was just gonna wait until you got here.
Well, thanks.
Great job, Tim.
I love that canvas.
My name is Judy, and our topic for this week was organizational development and change. And I kind of want to focus on adaptability. So I'm going to kind of go through two of the just the constructs that teach us about adaptability in organizations that we did in the meeting, so that I can kind of apply it to everyday life situations. So in one of our readings was this Pakinowski reading, and he talks about how to solve difficult problems instead of going from a linear way, because we tend to like to rush to solutions, and we always try to tame it, and we kind of try to come up with like a 1, 2, 3, 4 situation and try to come up with solutions. And so what's cool about his construct is, instead of doing it linearly, he has it in like the star form. And as a manager, is you want to be able to switch back and forth between all of these different factors depending on what's needed. And so you just want to attack this with questions. You're analyzing it from all different perspectives. You want to have this shared, brainstorming display of ideas so that everybody's on the same page. And then you're managing the learning context so that you're facilitating discussion and things like that, instead of trying to rush to a solution. Reflecting and managing the balance between working alone and working as a team. And so that's just like a really quick overview. I know we have all read this. And I think another one that really stood out to me was the video that we had to watch, with Moreau, Yves Moreau. And so he had this kind of a 6-point process. And so I'm going to go over this really fast, and then I want to talk about how, what those two things stood out to me as the most. From the two constructs, and what stood out to me from these two things. So he said, understand what your people do. And what that means is you need everybody to know what everyone else is doing. And reinforce integrators is remove layers and basically simplify things. And instead of having more process, have managers that can flow between the process. Increase total quantity of power, which is to empower everybody to use their own intelligence, which really just causes that engagement. And create feedback loops so that they're held responsible for the choices and decisions that they make, basically. And I really like his example of remove the second TV. If you guys watch the video, I don't need to explain that, but I thought that was just such a good point. And also, you only fail when you fail to ask for help. That's a quote from him, and I thought that was so good because that only comes from an understanding that we're all in on this as a team. And so your outcome is my outcome, and if you look good, I look good, and if you look bad, I look bad. And it's kind of that understanding of, because we're in this together, if you don't, even if you try your best to do your part, but you didn't ask for help, you're really not taking responsibility for if you mess up, that means the rest of the team messes up. So that's just really cool, is basically what the point of these two constructs is, but both of them talk about having to solve really complex situations, really complicated problems. And the main thing is there's a perspective shift. Is instead of focusing on your individual tasks, you're basically having to get this big picture view, so you understand what everybody is doing and then how it applies to you and what other people are doing. So it's basically a growth in conscientiousness. And also, because of that, you carry the responsibility of doing your part well, because you don't want to mess up other people's part, because you know that you're connected. And then so that increases accountability so that everybody's engaging with the process. And then by engaging with the process, you have less bureaucracy of layers and things to work through. And so it's more flexible. And so that makes room for creativity and adaptability. And so basically, after reading all of these really dense articles, all I could think about was the saying that my mother likes to use. And it's kind of one of her pet peeves, which is why it stood out to me. She is really big on teamwork, and she's really big on communication. And so one of her pet peeves is when, some people don't need to be. It's not like they're trying to be selfish or anything, but they're just very focused on, this is my task and just want to do a good job here, without really considering how it will affect other people. And so she calls it ego lobo, ego, which translates to one carrot, one hope. And so I don't know if that's a Chinese idiomatic expression. I don't know if she made it up. I have no idea. But basically, every time she's like, stop being your own carrot in your own hole, you know she's talking about. And it's just I just want to be the best carrot I can be. I'm in my little hole, and you're in your little hole. And basically, there's no interconnectability. right? There's no adaptability. Even if you're doing a good job, it's very difficult to change because there's so much structure. So that's what's really interesting is when you want to be adaptable, you have to increase the communication, but actually lower the structure. And so instead of being one carrot, one pole, you really want to be like the very grassroots system. We're all in this together. You are an individual. You are an individual blade of grass. You are important, and we're not taking that away. But you know that your decisions affect everybody else, and you know that other people's decisions affect yours as well. And so Moreau, his example was instead of adding more bones, be the nervous system. So I thought that was very similar to this. And I had considered telling like a lot of like personal stories to illustrate this point, but I actually don't think I need to. I feel like everybody can come up with some example of some group project that you were in that either you guys did really well because you communicated really well and you know that this end result was some kind of team synergy that you would not have been able to get on your own. And I'm sure you could all come up with an example of when your group projects just were really, really difficult because nobody was really communicating. Everybody just wanted to get their job done as minimal as possible. And hey, let's just turn it in. And there's always these occasions where I see the nods, yeah. And there's always those occasions where, like, oh, I did my job, I did my part, and so that should be good enough. When you don't realize that without meaning to, you're kind of throwing your team under the bus because you're not sharing that responsibility and accountability. So I just want to end with this thought. Don't be a carrot in a field of grass. Thank you.
I was gonna say something I realized is kind of creepy. So I'm gonna change what I was gonna say, saying that. I'll tell you individually. I really appreciate how you can take something so dense and so simplify it and make it into a story. And like, I don't want to be a carrot. You know what I mean? Like I love it. You did a great job. And you didn't do as much text. It's better this time. I'm so proud of you. Yeah.
Try. That comes from I teach little kids.
Oh.
So I think the way I measure my success is retainability, like retention.
Yeah.
And so it's like if you remember it or not, or if you like can you apply it or not?
Yeah, it makes it good. Like I could tell that when you read, you really can understand everything that you're saying, and you're able just to like explain it so easily. It seems like,
Oh, thank you.
and like connected it to the story. I
appreciate that. Let's think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you really personalize the models. For example, you didn't just screenshot well, it was fun readings. You actually made I don't know, that's in Canvas, so you had to actually read those things. It's really personalized, and you emphasize. Honestly, I think you both changed. Yeah, definitely that relationship of the carrot, the emphasis on not being by yourself and such really shift a lot of reflection.
Thank you. Yeah, just his slide wasn't pretty. It didn't match. Yes.
Thank you for motivating us. I felt super motivated. Now I can't just be a carrot.
Okay.
But I really liked your presentation. You did really well. I thought it was super interesting about the beginning. You were like, okay, like I put all this text on here, but like I'm just gonna go through it really quickly because we all talked about how we didn't like that. So you adjusted really, really well. So I commend you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. I tried. I wasn't sure if I still like talked too much about it.
You're natural.
Oh, I appreciate it.
So what you did, I thought was really clever here. You mixed metaphors, which is fun, and then it's a callback, right, to like something you said earlier, right? And you made us think. You made us more familiar with the idea, and left us with something that we could take, right, with us. Like, oh, okay, I don't want to be that carrot in a field of grass. And the next time that happens, you're going to be the person we think of, or at least this metaphor.
You're a beautiful carrot, but.
Right, right. I might say that to someone on a team that I'm on, and they'll have no idea, but I'll know. I'll know.
I
Right.
wanted to call them anti-carroting measures.
That's great. That's an initiative I could get behind for sure. So I thought that was really nice. I thought that was a clever use of it. I do appreciate the adaptability and not like just reading off the wall of text or anything like that, but to get through the material. I thought it was a lot of material to get through. So I think that's a challenge. And I think the Moreau stuff was really good. I thought that was funny because he had some good stuff. The second TV, I agree, was hilarious. The last quote there was actually from the CEO of Lego, not from him himself. So about the asking for help, right? Like that one. That one was from the CEO of Lego, which is a phenomenal company for change, and they handle change really well. So I think there was some. I mean, there's always room for more like example and anecdote and story to presentations because that's what people like the most. But I like the content that you gave. The only thing that I would try and do maybe differently in the future, instead of like, because you just recreated like his graph, right? With your artistic ability, I would do something maybe different. Maybe visualize those things, or to do it differently. Because if those that have seen it, if you haven't, it's worth a watch. It's not that long. It's very good.
I'm trying to have you guys like harken back.
Yeah, depending on how long ago we watched it, right? Within the last week, though. So I just thought maybe, given your skill set, and I mean, I only say this because I think you would be very good at it. To take the things that he's talking about, which are complicated, you know, it took him a long time, relatively, to do what you did, right? Like he took, I don't know how long it was, a 7-10 minute presentation. Yeah. You had one slide and you're just like bam, 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 bam. And I thought that's good, very potent, and just a harken back reminder of what it was, which is fine. But to do it slightly differently, maybe to have an image or something more tangible that we could hold on to, just as a thought, as a possibility. But I mean, I always get excited for your presentations because they're very good. So I thought that was awesome. I love to hear quotes from your mother, so please introduce those anytime possible. That was really fun. I feel like we all get to know you a little bit more, right? And you lit up in that time too. I think other people will see it and you can watch it for yourself, but you were very animated during that, and so it's nice to just see that and to see.
There's something silly about talking about your mother.
Yeah, no, I agree.
was like, I have to do it because this is like her pet peeve.
It's perfect. It's very appropriate. It didn't seem out of place or inappropriate in any way. It was really appropriate, and it really brought out some life, and it just made us all like latch onto the idea more firmly. So I think you did an exceptional job of that. So thank you very much.
I was gonna tell stories. I had so many stories. But I realized I was going way over time.
Yeah. That happens. All right. So we are just about